Hello and welcome to Truth versus Hype. Our focus tonight shines light on a paradox at the heart of the Indian economy. On one hand, described as one of the fastest growing economies in the world, attracting, if the government is to be believed, ever-growing inflows of foreign investment. And on the other hand, business scandals, Nirav Modi is only the latest, which raise questions about the propensity of Indian businessmen to lean towards dubious business practices and the failure of regulatory safeguards, often aggravated by cronyism. Over the course of the past 5 months, some of the world's best-known investors have filed for fraud against a Gurgaon-based real estate firm, IREO, accusing its promoter of siphoning off around 10,000 crore rupees, almost $1 billion. The cases have been in front of Indian investigating agencies for months, but so far there's been no action because, alleged the investors, the company has political links. The promoter of IREO, Lalit Goyal, is the brother-in-law of the BJP leader Sudhanshu Mittal. Now, IREO began in 2004-05. It was started by Lalit Goyal and 3 international fund managers. Its growth is visible along the golf course road, which is considered the prime area of Gurgaon's building boom, dominated by its stars today. Since then, more than 300 investors have put in approximately $1.6 billion, around 10,000 crores, making it one of the biggest real estate funds in India. Now, the investors include Tiger Partners, they include Stanford University, the University of Notre Dame, US-based Axon Capital, and the Children's Investment Fund Foundation UK, which has been started by the billionaire philanthropist Christopher Horn. These are just some of the big names. In April 2016, the Trump Corporation announced IREO as one of its partners in India. Donald Trump Jr. at the time had called the company a truly fantastic group. But by February this year, 2 of the investors began filing complaints against IREO, accusing it of fraud and cheating. Today, many other investors, over 70 of them we're told, have joined those complaints of cheating and fraud. The allegations of fraud have been brought to light by Ramesh Sanka, a former IREO CEO turned whistleblower. He joined in 2015 and says he resigned a year later when he detected the fraud. The core charges revolve around the model by which real estate companies in Gurgaon purchase land. They use what are known as land-owning companies to buy the land, to bypass rules that prevent foreign investors from acquiring agricultural land in India. Once the land is acquired and land use changed from agricultural to, let's say, commercial or residential, these companies are meant to get absorbed by the parent real estate company. That claim the investors in their complaint did not happen in the case of IREO.
The shares of these companies, of the landowning companies, are held by the employees of IREO, and as a matter of precaution, IREO always took those shares under pledge along with the blank transfer forms signed by these employees. So, over a period of time from 2010 onwards, Lalit went on transferring these land-owning companies and license-holding companies to one company by the name Commander Realtors, which is now 100% owned by Lalit Goyal and his 2 family members through a layered structure.
Now, the whistleblower claims that he has submitted masses of documents to back their claims, documents which have been vetted by legal firms in the UK and the US. And yet he says the government agencies have not responded. Now finally they've had to move the Supreme Court.
Lalit himself, is having his own relatives in the political parties. So obviously he is using them, might be using. And what is important is that, in in June 25th, all the investors had a conference in New York. One interesting point that came is that this is the largest fraud in the done by any fund manager to the best of their knowledge in the world.
Now, we contacted each of the government agencies in India where a complaint has been lodged, and this was the response.
We contacted all the government agencies where complaints have been filed. The concerned officials at the Economic Offences Wing of the Delhi Police, Serious Fraud Investigations Office and Central Board of Direct Taxes said that they had no specific knowledge of the case. They also said that the charges would be vetted before cognizance taken, and sharing information about such cases would hamper investigation. Meanwhile, officials at the Prime Minister's office, Central Board of Excise and Customs and Director of Town Planning did not answer our specific query. Meanwhile, the Commissioner of Gurgaon Police did not answer several calls we made.
All right, we also made multiple attempts to get IREO's version. We sent them detailed emails as well as made calls. Finally, Mr. Lalit Goyal did speak to us on the phone, agreeing to be quoted. He refused to come on camera. These are his broad responses. He claims, where is the proof that I have taken money? He said all the transactions have been audited. He said out of 400 IREO investors, only 40 have problems. He said out of the total IREO land, he accepts that he does own it, but he says I only own 10%. He denies any agreement which prevents him from owning these land-owning companies. He also said that the real estate industry in India has collapsed, that barring a few realty funds, the average return is only about 15 to 20%. This is to explain why these investors are not getting their returns. On the charges of political collusion or clout, he said, did I commit a mistake by getting my sister married to a politician? He said, why does political clout always come up? He also says that he is an NRI resident in Singapore, but he is not in any way afraid or evading Indian law. We also reached out to his brother-in-law, Sudhanshu Mittal, but he refused to come on record. He simply said that he doesn't have a comment, nor does he have anything to do with IREO. All right, joining us tonight, we have an absolutely packed panel on the show. We have with us, joining us from New York via Skype, Dinakar Singh. He is CEO and co-founder, Axon Capital. He is one of the investors of IREO that has spearheaded this complaint against the company. Also joining us here in the studio is Ramesh Sanka, former CEO IREO, the whistleblower that we saw earlier in our program. Sameer Chaudhary, legal counsel of the IREO group, has just about made it at the last minute on the show. Great to have you here. Jaiveer Shergill, spokesperson of the Congress, is with us. And we hope to be joined by P.N. Vijay, financial analyst and a BJP supporter. I believe that we actually have Mr. Vijay with us, is on the show. As is Sameer Jasuja, founder and CEO, Prop Equity, which is one of India's largest databases for the real estate market. Now, let me just start with you, Dinakar Singh, joining us from New York via Skype. You heard some of the responses that we finally did manage to get from Lalit Goyal, where he says there's no proof that he's actually siphoned off any money, and that the fact that investors like you are not getting their returns is simply to do with the nature of the Indian real estate market. How would you respond to that?
Thank you. Look, I represent my firm, but in truth, 76 investors have explicitly supported arbitration to remove the manager and have filed complaints with regulators at this point. That represents over 2/3 of all the capital raised, even though we haven't even been able to get an investor list from Lalit and his crew. The reality is that almost everything they have told us in the last number of years is simply a lie and has turned out not to be true. Let me just quote themselves. This is their presentation in 2011 to investors. Unlike other real estate managers, IREO managers only charge management fees at the fund level. They have never earned a profit from IREO projects, nor do they charge any of the other fees customary in the real estate industry. No project fees, no project development fees, no leasing fees, et cetera, et cetera. Right. At every instance, they have denied any side dealing on this. They've never reported related party transactions of this type, and yet it's quite clear this is what's been going on. What we have seen, right. Mr. Sanka approached us last fall. We were shocked by these allegations. We then hired lawyers and accountants around the world with other investors to investigate this. And what we have turned up is simply shocking. It was not supposed to be so that he would be taking hundreds of millions of dollars out of these projects. And the reality here is that this isn't just rich investors from abroad. Okay. 1.6 billion is from among the most prominent investors in the world. But another several billion has been raised from Indian homeowners who 7 years later have not gotten their homes.
So, Mr. Mr. Singh, I see the point that you're making, but let me just understand very quickly. You're not simply saying this is financial mismanagement. You stand by the charge that this is fraud.
We are investors. We take the risk and we lose money in things all the time. We make money in things all the time. The reason why investors were outraged now is one reason only, which is that it is simply not okay for a manager like Goyal to simply steal billions of dollars from investors. That's what's happened here. He has stolen money from home, money that should have been going to investors and to build homes. has gone into his pocket.
Just to clarify, how much of your money did you invest, which is, according to you, stuck? I'm talking about Axon.
1.6 billion. We and the Children's Investment Fund happen to be the two largest investors. We've never disclosed exact numbers, but we are comfortably about 20% of the overall investment.
Okay, fine. All right, Sameer Chaudhary, would you like to respond?
Let's first understand the basics of the dispute, the background of the people who are claiming that a fraud has been committed in them. We have Mr. Sanka, who's claiming to be a whistleblower. He's claimed to be a whistleblower in New York in an investor presentation which was made with Mr. Dinakar Singh present in there.
Okay.
He claimed that he has been a whistleblower all his life, according to the claim made in the New York presentation.
Okay.
He says in his previous employment in 2000, because of his whistleblowing, alleged whistleblowing,
Yes.
E&Y, who were the auditors of that company, I will not name the company, were forced to resign.
Okay.
The truth is, once you investigate it, it will come out that E&Y resigned on its own, and Mr. Sanka, despite the resignation, continued in employment for the next 2-3 years.
Okay, but if I could just ask you, Sameer, if one moves away for a minute from the antecedents of those making the complaints.
Antecedents are very important.
As far as the substantive charge is concerned, of financial fraud,
yes.
What would you say to that?
When a substantive charge of fraud is concerned, the antecedents become even more important.
But
Mr. Sanka is the person who's been debarred by
Yes, let's
SEBI
ignore
from
facts
accessing
because
capital
we can't
markets
deal with them.
for 3 years. The appeal is still pending in the Supreme Court of India.
Okay, but what does that still have to say about the fact that we just heard Dinakar Singh say that 76 investors have now come on board saying that they believe there is fraud?
We have asked for a list of investors which has never been supplied till date.
Okay.
So I cannot comment whether they have 76 or whether they have 10 investors.
Okay.
There has been a letter written by our solicitors in England,
Right.
to which there has not been a response. We have only been told that we will be replied at the relevant time.
Mr. Chaudhary, I think you are saying something that's simply untrue. As you know, in arbitration claims, to get arbitration claims, we had to get support from investors. Those are in fact filed with the arbitration authorities under the contracts of IREO.
Mr. Singh, only the American arbitration.
But again, as with everything so far, you have simply misstated the truth.
Mr. Singh, the American arbitration only requires a majority of arbitrators, majority of investors, which list has not been supplied by you till date.
Okay, let's get Mr. Sanka to respond to the fact that you yourself, as he said, has got some issues. The fact that SEBI has barred you.
Okay. First is, SEBI has barred is correct, but Securities Appellate Tribunal has reversed that with a majority decision.
And SEBI has gone in appeal. The appeal is pending in the
Okay,
Supreme
fine. Let him finish. Yes.
SEBI has gone to the Supreme Court and Supreme Court has refused to give any stay.
But the matter is pending, notice is issued.
That means
Mr. Sanka is not telling that the notice
judgment
has
as
been
on
issued.
today given by SAT is the final.
Okay, let's come to the substantive point of why we're all assembled here.
Absolutely.
Which is this allegation of fraud and the fact that we're talking of $1 billion and we're talking about investors from all around the world and what that means for India's image. Yeah. Lalit Goel is saying, and I'm sure this is what Sameer Chaudhary's argument would be as well, that where is the actual proof that I've run away with the money? The land is still there, the construction is all there. Where is that proof?
See, there are three
in
proofs.
Simple terms.
There are three proofs, not one we can give. The first one is that SV Housing, a company has been sold, which is a landowning and license holding company. That money has not come to IREO group or IREO funds at all.
Fine. So you've identified a bunch of such companies which
Absolutely.
you claim have been sold.
Yes.
But you're saying that despite all this proof, there's been absolutely no response from the government agencies.
That is
right.
true.
This is the part that is sort of intriguing to all of us.
True.
What do they tell you when you go there?
No. See, first of all, it's very difficult to get into those setups. But still you go meet them, give them all the papers. It's not 1 or 2 papers. With the police, for example, we have filed 3,800 pages of proofs, A to Z, except the bank statement, because bank statement is quite clearly is not available.
Right.
All other documents directly, indirectly
What
related
is relevant
to
is
that
how those
transaction
documents have been
filed.
obtained, Mr. Sanka. That is also very relevant.
But let's just bring in P.N. Vijay here. P.N. Vijay, I mean, you know, when a case like this comes to light and you have people who go to the agencies and they go before them and they say that they have all this proof, we're talking now about some fairly well-regarded investors from around the world, and you don't see any response. It's now been, what, months? When did you first start?
Almost 5 months.
Almost 5 months. Then does that question not arise? That is there some political clout, some influence that is at play here which is preventing this from happening? P.N. Vijay.
Well, I wouldn't know, but all I can say surely is that when funds like Axon and Children's, who are highly respected
Yes.
international investors in the best of intentions, put huge money, and they are accusing of siphoning. And it's a fact that homeowners have not got their homes in spite of 7-8 years. There is prima facie a case for economic affairs offences wing to immediately investigate. And I would expect, at least after these type of news revelations,
Yes.
that the Ministry of Finance bucks up and immediately starts an investigation.
Right.
Srinivasan, one interesting thing was that this is not the first time this guy is hitting the headlines for the wrong reasons. You would recollect in 2010,
Yes.
October, November, I recollect,
Yes.
he was raided, 26 premises of his, including his corporate office in Niti Bagh, was
Yes,
raided.
by the Enforcement Directorate.
etc. In 2010, and finally nothing came out of it, for some strange reason, nothing came out of it. So he has been on the radar for quite some time.
Right.
And I'm surprised. I mean, he doesn't surely have a good name in the market, I can tell you. He doesn't
Okay.
have. But I would like
But
to
would
say,
you-
this is
can
my
I just-
personal experience,
Yes.
that when we try to link a person like Sudhanshu Mittal to this, I think we should be careful, because I don't think Sudhanshu is very much involved in this business. So, though it's very tempting to link him, I would at this stage give him the benefit of the doubt.
Would you, Jaiveer Shergill, give the benefit of doubt, or do you see political clout here being used to try to suppress at least even a basic investigation into this case?
There's a saying, bad examples serve as good warning signs. The episode of Nirav Modi, Mehul Choksi's doesn't seem to have sent any message to the government that they need to act timely. Timing is of the essence. The same pattern, a whistleblower complained to the Prime Minister in July
Right.
regarding Nirav Modi, government said. The slow-footedness of the government to investigate
Yes.
sends a message that you are interested in promotion of ease of doing corruption rather than doing ease of business.
I'm coming to you. I need to go to Sameer Jasuja, but I just want to get a quick rebuttal in from you, Sameer Chaudhary. The fact that there has been a track record of Lalit Goyal, he has been raided by the ED in the past as well, but again, the mystery of the fact that there's no progress, is that an example of political clout?
Unfortunately, it's very tempting these days that whenever something is not proceeding as per the expectation of the complainant or the investor,
Yes.
it's the easiest thing to say is there's political clout
But
operating.
5 months, not even a basic.
There are complaints
Progress?
filed, notices have been issued by the court. We are cooperating with the investigation. I don't know what basis they have to say that nothing is being done.
Okay. All right, let me just bring in Sameer Jasuja here. Sameer Jasuja, take a slightly longer view, because we're getting a little lost perhaps in the thicket of the nitty-gritties, that when you look at the case of what is happening in IREO, as someone who's familiar with the India property market, particularly this Delhi, Gurgaon, NCR region, do you see a familiar pattern emerging here?
See, there are always two sides to a coin, and I'm seeing everybody bashing IREO very badly over here. But I've looked at some of the data and the kind of land banks that IREO owns today. So
Yes.
I personally don't think that there's been funds that have been siphoned to the extent that we've been talking about.
Okay.
Just the land bank that they own in Gurgaon is worth 9,000 crores today. I'm talking about the unsold land bank. In addition to that, I think if you look at their pan-India land banks, they easily exceed over $1 billion.
Right.
So I think if $1.6 billion came into IREO, there is real land which I think is worth more than $2 billion that is sitting in the company today.
Okay, so in
I
one way,
cannot comment on, if there were few land parcels that were sold. Yeah.
sorry, that's
The delivery, IREO has managed to deliver.
okay, go ahead very quickly, yes. Go ahead, sir.
Most of the apartments that they have committed to deliver, their projects are ongoing. Yeah, some of them may be a little slower than the others, but I don't think the kind of siphoning of money and the big case that is being made out to be is that big.
Okay.
I've also had a hedge fund investing in my company, so they have different.
Okay, fair enough. I think you made an interesting point. Let me, number of people have their hands up and we're very short on time. Let me just quickly go across to Dinakar Singh. This is an interesting point, Dinakar Singh. If you have a huge bank of undeveloped land already, almost worth the amount which investors like you are now seeking from IREO, is that a solution? That if they were to, I don't know, sell those assets and pay the investors back?
Yeah, sure.
Would that settle matters?
First, we've been investors since for 12 years. We've been long-term patient investors. They're university endowments and pension funds that are 100-year investors in things. I have never, in my business career of 27 years, ever filed litigation against a company. In this case, it isn't. First, we think what he was doing, from what we've seen, is early on starting to take money out. So the Corridors project, he took out $100 and some million. Then he would start doing sham transactions that the fraud increased. Now, having land that is valuable, we agree that much of our assets ought to be worth a lot of money. The problem is now he's simply taking it. He's moving the title and licenses into his own pocket. So the fact that the land is valuable isn't in dispute. The question is who owns it and who has gotten the benefit of it so far.
Okay, fair enough. Last word from you, Sameer Chaudhary. Why not just sell the land, repay the investors, settle the matter?
Let me explain.
Very briefly.
Yes, very briefly. The investment documents by way of which the investment has come in clearly specify that they will acquire development rights over the land. By development rights, simply what we mean is the economic benefit arising out of the land. Now, just to give you brief data, out of the total land held by IREO Group in India, which is about 4,000 acres, 94% is already the development rights on which stand transferred to IREO companies. So there is no question at all of anything being siphoned away.
Samir is giving wrong information.
This is
the 2005 document which is used for raising funds from the investors clearly show that all the landowning companies and license holding companies will be a part of IREO. They will be subsidiaries of IREO's
land
operating companies.
We will know what you've contracted
for. Today all those companies are owned by Lalit.
We will know what you've contracted for. That's part of the arbitration.
Let me make one point from a distance. India requires FDI, and I am a big believer and supporter of the growth we've seen in India. But if Prime Minister Modi is right that India is open for business, which it is and ought to be, it has to be closed for corruption and for fraud. I would hope that we're proven wrong, but I think it is outrageous that 3 or 4 months later, after what to us were shocking allegations and thousands of pages of documents, we need this to be investigated. And it's clear that this is corruption and fraud that is causing it to slow down. It has to change.
Okay, all right. We'll have to absolutely leave it there. I know everybody still wants to come in, but we were very, very short of time. As I said, that's also because we had some last-minute joinees to the panel. But thank you very much indeed. We'll continue to track this story, and let's wait and see if there is any action on it. That's it on Truth versus Hype. Thank you so much for speaking to us, all of you. Good night.